Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Thanks for joining in today. We are back on the Coxton Sub, and we are in the town of Highbridge running the Highbridge Switcher. This train is powered by one SW1500. It is also the only SW1500 on the entire route that has the orange lettering for cotton belt. Our job today is going to be pretty busy. So Highbridge is a relatively small town, more like a suburb almost of Coxton. It's just to the north of Coxton, about 2.5 to 3 miles or so, not too bad. But this is the location of the second largest industry on the entire route, and this is a major brickworks. There are also a couple of local tracks, and there's a small coal mine. But here we are right now heading over to the brickworks. This is just a little view to kind of show you the scope of everything. I do have a video where we actually rebuilt this in the past, and there are tons of finer details to add even still, but we'll get there eventually. So the first job that we're going to work on today is pulling the empty coal hoppers off of the dump track. And we do have just a couple of loaded hoppers that we need to set out on the dump track. Actually, we're going to get to that later. So the two that were on the track, they're going to be left in the yard. And all the other empty hoppers, we're going to actually take those with us. Those have been scheduled for pickup. The thing about Highbridge is there are no trains that serve only Highbridge. It's only served by through Trainz, but mostly by the Luton Turn, which was actually the first video I ever published on this route was the Luton Turn. And overwhelmingly, the majority of cars on the Luton Turn are cars bound for Highbridge. So they basically come through, they drop off a huge cut of cars in Highbridge, then they head on over to the co-op and to Luton. They do some work, come back, and then pick up cars on the way back to Coxton. So the nice thing about that is it means we can really get all the traffic we need just by having, one train a day serve Highbridge. All right, we're also right now moving some loaded cars over the dump track for the silicates, things like clay and sand and whatnot. I gotta be honest, I was driving this in realistic mode, and it took every ounce of power this little guy had to move these hopper cars. They were loaded with sand, so they're really heavy. I think they're like 70 tons of cargo each, plus, they're 25 tons or whatever empty, so it was quite heavy, quite difficult. But first we cleared 5 cars off the dump track, and now we are shoving these 5 cars back. This is a routine set of work here. We pretty much have some cars that we shove in here every day. These cars were waiting to be shoved on this track. That's another thing that is common. You'll see us put that into effect again later. We have some more set outs for this track that we don't have space for, and so they'll end up just getting set out, but not on the dump track. All right, now we're pulling out the empty hoppers and the empty covered hoppers that we're going to take with us. What we do typically as we work the mill, or the brickworks rather, we put the outbound cars here in this yard. So one track is kind of for outbound cars, another track is for inbound cars or outbound cars if you need, depending. It's really flexible actually, how you use the small 3-track yard there, and then one of our tracks is just for getting around. But here we're pulling out some covered hoppers that are empty. These have all been sitting over here, just out of the way. This is where we dump some of the sand if, for whatever reason, we can't get to the dump track if it's full or, something like that. But it's not really too picky. I mostly simulate that the dump track over there that we showed recently was for clay, and then sand is dumped over there behind where we're looking right now. But we are heading over to where we dump the aggregates, the gravel and things like that, the different forms of limestone. Not only do we make, the reddish bricks that they use for house construction, but we also make the prefab panels, like center blocks, as I always called them growing up. The ones that they used to make fill with asbestos way back in the day. But those are all created from this limestone. And so we have these limestone cars. We're taking the empty ones with us, and we have 5 of them that we need to set out. And it's kind of the same deal. Those 5 loaded aggregate cars were so heavy, along with the 10 or 11 that we have that are empty. I think it was right at 1,000 tons. When I checked the stats, I noticed that this locomotive just really has a hard time pulling anything more than about 900 tons, which honestly makes a lot of sense if I'm completely honest, and I'm really happy that it has a hard time with that. I think right here I was on notch 6 maybe, which for going 2 miles an hour, that is really, really high notch of power. I don't know if in the real life if that, or in the real world, if that would cause wheel slip. I just don't know. I don't know. But I definitely had the sanders on just then. So, all right, and here we are leaving those 5 cars on their dump track. So far we've seen 3 dump tracks, one for coal, one for clay, and one for gravel. We've also talked a little bit about where we can dump some of the sand. But we went ahead and decided that since this junk is so heavy, we're going to go ahead and get it out of the way, which means get it over in the main yard of Highbridge. And since these are mostly empties, all of these hoppers actually are empty, the open hoppers and the covered hoppers. It actually made it a lot easier for us to go ahead and just grab this long cut of cars and back it out here to get it into Highbridge Yard. So this is Highbridge Yard. On the right, it does have a Y, which makes it easy to access the different industries that have tracks facing different directions. There are 4 tracks in the yard where we store cars, and 1 track is used just for getting around the yard without having to take the Y. So we typically use 2 tracks for incoming cars and 2 tracks for outbound cars. And then the the lead for the yard is on the north side of the yard. There's not really a lead on the south side. It does feed right into the siding. So technically, if no one's using the siding and the dispatcher were to say it's all good, then we could use the siding, which we will later for a quick move. But typically, we do all of our work in the yard from the north side where we have a dedicated lead and we can stay off the main and the siding. Dispatcher likes it when we don't get inside his CTC territory. We do have a KCS manifest here waiting to head north. When I was shooting this video, I had to think to myself, what exactly did I want this guy to wait for? And I just couldn't, I just didn't have a southbound train that I needed to run that would, serve as a meet here. Nor did I have a northbound train that I needed to run currently. And so I just had to wait for a bit, and then eventually we'll see it head off. Maybe we can claim that there was like a mow crew or something up above further north that was keeping it held up. Feel free to back up the video real quick and check out that map of Highbridge if you want. I wanted to zoom out just enough to be able to see all the tracks, but not have to worry about seeing all the clutter with the consists and things like that. All right, so right now the yard looks pretty full, and that is mostly just because we've basically shuffled our setouts onto, not our setouts, sorry, our pickups, cars that are leaving Highbridge, onto 2 tracks. We have not filled up those 2 tracks. But now also we're going to start clearing the yard out by clearing out the other 2 tracks. And it does look like the KCS manifest is pulling out now. Got to be honest, I do like these SD40s. Although it did look like that one was numbered 666. If that's the case, that's really funny. All right, and here we come with some setouts. These are all going back to the brickworks. I probably figured you guys would have guessed that, since the brickworks seems to be receiving and shipping mostly covered hoppers, which makes a lot of sense considering that clays and sands are almost exclusively shipped in covered hoppers so they don't get wet. I do believe that all of these cars are numbered for the clay track, and there's definitely not enough space on the clay track for all of these. So what we'll end up doing is setting out 4 or 5 of them on the dump track. We'll set a few more out. Actually, wait, the dump track is already full. So what we'll do is we'll set them out on the track, but not over the dump. And they'll just be waiting for next time. And then the rest are actually going to have to leave in the yard. Not the main Highbridge yard out on the west side of town, but the smaller 3-track yard there by the industry. So here's a decent view of the scope of everything here in Highbridge. The coal mine is just to the left there, which is north. All right, and there we have finished making the moves for those clay-filled covered hoppers. And now it's time to head over and do some work with the other cars that were sitting in Highbridge Yard waiting to be delivered. So these are setouts to the brickworks. We went ahead and grabbed those. We're on the south side of the yard now, and we are heading back north. We're going to take the Y and head over to the brickworks. All right, now that we're at the brickworks, we have to set out these boxcars. We have a few pickups of boxcars and I think a bulkhead as well we needed to pick up from the loading tracks where they load the bricks. And then we are going to go ahead and set out the coal hoppers, which we decided to do first. There's only really enough space for about 4 100-ton hoppers here on this dump track, so we set those out, and then the other 4 we'll set off in the storage yard there. So next time we run this local, we will shuffle those cars. We'll make sure to unload the hoppers sitting on the dump track, and then the other ones in the yard, we'll put those in their place and do some shuffling. This is going to be a really fun and entertaining job if I ever do manage to get multiplayer to work with this route. Since I'm intending to do a Trainz store release, that is hopeful. I'm really hoping that they still support multiplayer that is not necessarily multiplayer surveyor, although I am planning to transition to 22 at some point and start a new route in multiplayer surveyor, but that will not be until I finish this one. So still lots to do here, but I definitely think it's going to be ready to go by next year for sure. I did throw in some weather effects just to kind of see how often it would change the weather. I did notice it changes the weather way too often, and I didn't really like it too much. And there I accidentally pressed the throttle the wrong direction. So I kind of slammed those cars together. Probably broke a knuckle in real life, but it's all right. Mostly here, we're just shuffling these box cars, getting some of our setouts done, and then trying to figure out which cars we're going to take with us for our pickups. I didn't show too many of these finer details here, but I did definitely make a few moves of note. Right now, we have a car that we need to set out on the middle track, but we also needed to get some pickups out of the way on the third track, so that's what we did, was we got those and we shoved them over to the middle track and left them there temporarily. Actually, sorry, we left them on the third track, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and place our set out on the middle track. And then we're also going to grab all of them and shove them on the middle track so we can get our set out done on the third track, because it needs to be at the back. The reason we went through all the pain for that is because we're going to be leaving a couple of those cars back on the third track. They actually were not ready for pickup. And I like to put new cars at the back of spurs. It just makes more sense. That way we get better car movement, and, you know, every car gets to get picked up by a train. All right, we're back in the main yard now, and we are running over to work the local tracks. The local tracks, there's 2 of them. They're on the south side of town. I am certainly going to remodel these here in the future as I move toward the town of Highbridge. I have at least gotten the Turfex done for this area for the most part, but I need to do a lot of retexturing, get some new buildings in there. I'm not going to change the track arrangement any, but definitely needs quite a few texture and asset upgrades. Everything you're looking at right now has been there since I started this route back in Tain, way back. All right, from these local tracks, we're actually doing quite a few pickups. I think we end up picking up 5 cars. We've got 2 gondolas and 3 box cars we pick up. There are a few cars that we will leave there as holds for next time. And right now, it's mostly kind of just arbitrary, my decision process for those. But I do have a system that I have put together that's kind of takes some of the arbitrary nature out of the operations. I don't like arbitrary in the grand scheme of things because it's easy to get biased, and, you know, to do something repetitively because it's easier. But, you know, to be honest, right now I'm still developing everything and still testing everything, so it's all good. There's not really too much left to do here. We still have a few more scenes to check out, though, some things that are going to happen. But basically, we're going to go ahead and take all these pickups and we're going to shove them onto the second track there. And then we're going to have more or less 2 mostly full tracks of cars waiting for the Highbridge Local when it runs tomorrow. The Highbridge Local runs in the morning. It's one of the first trains out of Coxton every day. Sorry, not the Highbridge Local. It's the Luton Turn, but it's, of course, the one that serves Highbridge. So we'll get to that sometime on another operating day. And here's a brief look at the coal mine. You can see we have 2 cuts of hoppers ready to go. We're not going to be picking up any of those today or working anything from the coal mine, mostly because we don't have the capacity or the space for it. We've already done so many pickups and setouts. And the last thing to do is to put the switcher back where it goes. So far, it's been a fun operating video. I think all in all, this was about 2.5 hours of drive time, so when you think about it in the multiplayer standpoint, that is actually fantastic. That will definitely keep an operator busy. It was about 12 miles that we drove that little switcher. So just one little job, you can have a lot of stuff that gets done. Thanks for watching, guys. It's always good to have you on the channel. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed your holidays if you celebrate Thanksgiving. But thanks for being here. It's always good to see you. We'll catch you guys on another one.